Why? Why are they so bad at this? What did Microsoft make last year? Like $60 billion or something insane? Their YouTube videos get literally like 800 views. You, tomorrow, could put out a video about any given Microsoft product and beat them at YouTube because you would make better content than they do. Their production values are awesome, but nobody cares because they have nothing to say. So you have an unfair advantage. It is trivially easy for you to beat literally the biggest companies in the world at YouTube. I would exploit that.
Hello, Finn. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so Finn McKenty is the creator of Punk Rock MBA. It's a YouTube channel you might have heard about. He's got 1.1 million followers on social media. Talk about goals there. And 130 million views on YouTube alone. So he's got a lot of things to share with us, but he's also a marketer and he's got a lot of experience in product design. We're gonna talk about why YouTube is overlooked or misunderstood by the B2B world and what can we do, as founders, as marketers, if we haven't touched that channel and why we shouldn't be ignoring it. So I wanna just jump right into things. Why do people actually watch YouTube and why do most B2B brands kind of get that wrong?
Yeah. So the key to understanding YouTube is to remember that it is a consumer entertainment app. This is why people watch it. So the most common use case for YouTube is something like this. So let's say that you have some laundry to fold or you're making lunch for your kid, whatever, you've got some sort of chore to do. And so you're going to open up your phone or turn on your TV and go to the YouTube app on your TV. And you're going to scroll through the homepage and go, okay, how about that? And you're going to click on that and you're going to have that on in the background and kind of halfway watch it, halfway listen to it while you're doing something else. That's the most common use case. So anything that you are making, any kind of content you're making should make sense in that context. And I think the reason why B2B or really companies in general struggle with this is because culturally, I think they have a very hard time seeing the value in anything that is not directly attributable. Like if it doesn't show up in GA as last click, basically it doesn't exist, or HubSpot
100%.
or whatever it is.
Attribution is a nightmare for us marketers, especially today.
Right. And I think this is a huge, huge blind spot for lots of reasons. Like attribution is cool, but remember, it's actually impossible. There's no such thing as a perfect attribution model. And everybody knows this, but we still act like it exists. It does not. And as the saying goes, not everything that matters can be measured and not everything that can be measured matters. So I think that, put it this way, let's say that you did a really good job on your YouTube channel and you were getting hundreds of thousands or millions of views a month on your videos, which is totally possible. I've done it for many years, so I know it's possible. I'm just one person making videos literally in my spare bedroom, of our house with a camera that's like 6 years old that I leave on auto. Like no joke, my camera literally has cobwebs on it because I put it on auto and I never changed it. I don't know how to use my camera. I don't know what ISO is. I don't know what f-stop is. This is how little I know about production. So point being, it is totally attainable, but let's say that you did a really good job of this. You're getting hundreds of thousands or millions of views a month on your videos. Now, what do you think that would do to the value of your company? What would that do to the brand? So let's say that you pulled that off. You went to a conference and everybody already knew who you were, knew the name of your company, knew a little bit about your backstory. Maybe you don't need to know everything, but they know that, started, at this time and the founder started it because of XYZ and, early struggles of the company was blah, blah, blah. First product was this and it didn't really work out, blah, blah, blah. What your values were, just any of that stuff. Or maybe they just saw like something funny or entertaining that you did on YouTube. And now everybody's going to recognize you at that conference. They're already going to know who you are. They're going to know a little bit about you. And when you go into a meeting and people already know who you are and already know your story, what do you think the likelihood is that you're going to do business after that meeting? It's like 10 times higher, right? And this is in a sales-driven context. So I would think of it more as a very top of funnel brand play that will enhance the effectiveness of all the lower funnel activities, rather than it's like everybody in B2B is so like over eager to get to the close. They treat everything that people in B2B do as bottom of the funnel. It doesn't work that way. They call it a funnel for a reason, right?
Well, it feels good. And it's, when you go to your boss, it's, it's something that seems more logical to a lot of people. So you're, pouring money into paid ads or things similar to that. But like you said,
do you think people are logical?
Well, I'm a marketer. I know that there's a lot of emotional. No, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is something, when you say it, it's so obvious. Why are B2B brands still treating YouTube like a library where they're just posting or ignoring the channel entirely? It sounds like it probably still does take a lot of time and effort to decide you're going to invest in this channel. Do you think that's true? You still need
Well,
to
it's hard
truly
for
invest
sure.
in it.
It is the hardest organic channel to crack, no question. But I would say the ups, the difficult degree of difficulty is the highest, but I think the upside is also the highest. And I can talk about that a little bit. But I think there's the cultural side of it, which is that their boss, I place the blame for all of this on the leadership. There's lots of people inside companies that I know would love to be doing a better job on YouTube, but this stuff starts from the top. So their boss is stuck in this sort of performance marketing, attribution mindset. And so, they're not going to let them post something on YouTube that they believe won't drive pipeline or leads or whatever it is, like immediately.
Or there's fear that, if you post something, it can have a negative effect. I've heard that a lot as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's a lot of fears
exactly.
that are behind that, a lot of fear-based
yes.
things stopping
So
them.
that's the other part is I think there's a skill set, which is understandable. Like to make there's nothing about B2B culture that would assume that they have the skill set to make entertaining content. In fact, the opposite, right? Like the type of, and there's not a knock on them, but the type of people that work at B2B companies culturally, general, like they're not the most entertaining people. Let's put it that way, right? Like people that work at Microsoft or Salesforce or whatever, they're not that type of person. On the other hand, people that do work, in entertainment, not the most professional people in the world, right? So it's unrealistic to expect that a B2B SaaS company should just magically be able to just make something entertaining that people want to watch on YouTube. It's not realistic to expect that. So I want to, I don't want to be harsh on anybody, but so there are two parts of this. There's the mindset piece and the skill set piece. The skill set piece is actually easier to solve if you don't have, because there's a lot of people that probably already have the skill set inside the company, but they're not allowed to utilize it because the leadership doesn't have the mindset piece. So the mindset has to be solved before the skill set can be deployed.
I love that. So, okay, if we're looking at, let's talk about the leadership then, because I think that point, if that doesn't get solved, that is the core.
Yep.
What do you think is a mindset shift, or how to make that mindset shift if you're a founder, or if you're making a case to the leadership that, we want to get involved in YouTube? I mean, this could also extend to other social channels, LinkedIn, TikTok, whatever. What is that mindset shift, and how to go about that, do you think?
If you believe that it would be valuable, and let me back up, the potential upside of YouTube is getting exposure to a very large, but probably not super targeted audience. So the opportunity is you could have millions of people a month watching your videos on YouTube for, like my average watch time on YouTube is 9.5 minutes. So there's 2-3 million people a month watching me talk for 9.5 minutes each, which is a very long time. So if you believe that would be valuable to you, then I think it's worth considering an investment in YouTube. However, you got to understand that these are not going to be super qualified people. They're not going to be, it's going to be 99% not your ICP. So you have to have the organizational mindset and skill set to work with that, right? So if you had extremely broad awareness, would that change your business in a meaningful way? For some people, it wouldn't. Like, I don't think everybody needs to do it. I don't know if you sell industrial chemicals to, and there's only like 5, customers for it in the world that really matter, you probably don't need to be on YouTube. I mean, maybe it's valuable, but you probably don't need to.
So let's get into some examples. So, what businesses maybe are doing this well, and how are they doing that? How are they getting that awareness from the general population when in reality, less than 1% actually would buy their product? Can you give us some examples so people can see who's doing it well and how they're doing it?
Hardly any in B2B. Like literally only one that I could really think of. And I'm like, yeah, that's good. And there's a few that are like, okay. Y Combinator is probably the best example of it. So who are their actual, we'll call it customers? I would say it's founders. Like this is their pipeline is they want to get the best and brightest founders of the next generation, the most valuable companies into their incubator so they can get their, piece of it and get their exit, right? So there's a very small number of people. Like, I don't know how many people do they admit every year, a couple hundred or something? I don't know. Something like that. And pretty much everybody already knows who they are. So you could argue they don't really need the awareness, but they're approaching YouTube the right way. So the wrong way would be the way that every B2B company would typically approach it, would be to throw up a bunch of like very technical webinars about, CAC to LTV ratio and payback period and, what you need to look for in a term sheet and all the stuff that is basically homework. And I'm sure it would be good information, but going back to what I described as the most common use case of YouTube, that's not somebody, like nobody's going to put that on while they're doing laundry. Like, oh, like here's the, 16 most important pieces of a term sheet. Nobody's going to put that on while they're doing laundry, right?
Absolutely. So
what
what are they doing well that you've identified?
So I like to think of these things as, the different pieces of the content funnel. So top, middle, bottom funnel. Top of funnel is always the hardest thing to crack, basically, at least for B2B or really, any kind of business thing. The top of funnel content is always the hardest because middle of funnel content, how to, blah, 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 that comes easily to people. Bottom of the funnel, like there's never a problem making that kind of content. Top of funnel is the hard part. And for them, like they made a video recently called How to Make the Most of Your 20s. And it has like 300,000 views or something now, which I would say is solid. Now, is that directly aligned with, is that going to directly drive pipeline tomorrow of, the best and brightest founders applying to YC? No. But if you watch that video, the sort of tone of it, is they don't say this is for people who want to be founders, but it's, sort of that's the subtext, it sort of assumes that you're this, entrepreneurial, somewhat technical kind of person that is, achievement oriented, all these sort of things that you can imagine. They're probably out of 300,000 people, there probably are a decent amount of those people. Probably most of them didn't really know what YC was. And now they do. And maybe if this video like spoke to them in some way, they're like, what's Y Combinator? And they click on the channel name and like they give people money to start their company. That sounds cool. I want to start a company. I want to check this out.
This is interesting. If you were to, so you've looked at their channel, you've seen their videos. How do you think they're selecting topics that they think there is some overlap? As you said, there's an overlap with the audience, their future audience. Do you have a framework that you probably have worked with brands to help identify this, to make sure that, we're not just doing.
I don't really work with brands specifically. I only work with founders. If there's middle managers, like if it's a middle manager, I don't work with them. Because for all the reasons, everybody listening to this, no offense to middle managers, it's not their fault. It's just literally impossible for me to be effective. So I only work with founders for that reason.
Okay, let's talk. Perfect. Because I'm a small teams person, startup person as well. So I totally agree with that. So let's talk about founders then. You're trying to make the case to your founder, or you are a founder yourself.
Yep.
How do you figure out what content would be relevant to that top of funnel, but not something so off board that you're just talking about something that has no connection? So you must have some way of identifying those topics.
Yeah, it depends on, the details basically. So in this case, and I don't know if this is how they think about it or not, but in this case, I would think, well, who are the type of people that, so let's say that the goal of the channel, so that's what it always starts as, what are our business objectives? So if the goal of the channel is to attract the best and brightest of the next generation of startup founders, then I would think, well, who are these people now that aren't yet founders, but we want to make sure that when they are, because if they're already a founder, they probably know what YC is. So I would look at this as like a way to make people, we'll call them MQLs, to turn them into MQLs when they do become founders. So that when they are a founder, they think, I'm going to join YC. So who are these people? I think that's fairly straightforward, like high achieving, super smart people, blah, blah, blah. So I would make videos for them. And like, what are the things that they're thinking about right now? What are the challenges? And the goal of this channel is to sort of help them navigate life, I think, and go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, would you say that you're thinking about practical things that they can do, or more like emotional things that they might want to, like the topic type
Both.
That might resonate with them,
Yeah.
Both of them?
So for example, I think one of the things that a lot of them might be weighing is whether to go to college or not, because they go, I know that I'm smart and I know I could teach myself this, but the credentials still mean something. Do I need to do this? Is it worth it? Student debt is scary. My parents want me to do this, but I'm burned out on formal education, whatever the things they're thinking are. So my general framework for making any kind of piece of content, but in particular YouTube, is that it always starts with unpacking what the audience currently believes. And there may be multiple different beliefs among there may be segments of the audience that believe different things. This goes back to something I learned from when I was doing stuff with P&G, Procter & Gamble on like Tide, Febreze, Swiffer, stuff like that. They have a thing they call the ACB, or Accepted Consumer Belief. So this is what people currently believe. So for example, Pantene, they owned Pantene at the time. I don't know if they still do. And when they did research, they found out that people believe your hair needs to be nourished, which, is factually not true because hair is not living tissue, so it can't be nourished. But that's what people believe. And so you got to meet people where they are. So when they talk about Pantene, they would talk about it, makes your hair feel nourished. Really what it is, it has a bunch of silicone in it and it coats your hair and makes it feel thicker and like heavier and richer, because it's coated with silicone, but people perceive that as being nourishing. So I would do that with an audience. Like, what do they believe? Like, what does the audience believe about college right now? List out whatever those beliefs are. And then every video or every piece of content, you're going to decide whether you want to validate or challenge that belief. So for example, if people believe that a 4-year degree is worthless, maybe that's the belief. And so you could take your video could take, either stance. You could say, hey, a lot of people, you've probably heard people say that a 4-year degree is the worst investment you could possibly make. For example, this, and this, and you show some clips of people like talking about how terrible college is. They're right. It's the worst thing you could ever do with your money. Here's why. Or you could take the opposite stance and say, I understand why people say that, but it's just not true. So let me break down why for you. So if you're considering college right now, I hope that you won't listen to these fear mongers and you'll decide to invest in your education.
So validate or challenge. So is this part of it? Still, it really sounds like it goes down to the emotional side of things. Okay, you're folding laundry, you're turning on YouTube. Have you found that these types of things work better? Emotional, like deep down, it's an emotional. Yeah.
It's all like the idea that like people in B2B make decisions logically is silly. Nobody makes decisions logically. That's not how human beings work. Like the whole entire field of like behavioral economics and heuristics and biases, like will tell you this, right? So you will not get the opportunity to tell somebody about the facts unless you engage them emotionally first, because facts to most people are boring. There's a small subset of people, I think, who are sort of driven by like mastery of technical skills where you can just sort of engage with them on that level, but it's not really true of very many audiences. So yeah, it always starts with something emotional. And then along the way, you can tell them some very valuable technical stuff, but again, you don't get the opportunity to engage them factually unless you engage them emotionally first.
Absolutely. So I want to talk, since we're talking about emotions, I mean, everything starts with the hook. This applies to YouTube. This applies to any marketing, really. So one of the quotes that I got from you, I think if someone else said it, but you had highlighted this. Remember the golden rule. If you can't think of a title and thumbnail to get people in the door, don't even waste time making the video. So I think that's the same for like, if you're going to post on LinkedIn, if you can't make a hook that's strong, don't post it.
Yep.
So this all goes down to emotions, but there's a little bit more to it. So I want to talk to you about, I think you have a 4-part hook formula. Tell us like how you do hooks, especially for YouTube. Because I think I always tell marketers, you should be spending 80% of your effort there, but people still get lost in the details of the video or the post. Yeah, tell me what your thoughts are about hooks.
I thought you were going to say the other golden rule that I like, which is the one with the gold makes the rules. So 4-part formula for hooks. So as you said, when I'm making a YouTube video or writing a LinkedIn post or any other piece of content, 60 or 80% of my effort goes into the hook. That's where I focus an inordinate amount of my attention because that's really where you win or lose them. So for YouTube, I have a 4-part framework for it. So let's say you're going to spend a minute on the intro to the video. So they don't have to come in this order, but the 4 parts are: number 1, the value, which is why they're going to watch this video. And most people listening to this are probably going to default to some sort of technical thing like, oh, because you need to know how to set up W-shaped multi-touch attribution modeling. No, the value, I mean, it could be that, but it's probably more like you need to be able to understand what's working and not working in your business. And attribution modeling is a way of doing that. It could also just be entertainment. Like that's valuable too. I'm going to tell you a funny story about the time I almost got fired when I was 21 for mouthing off to my boss at the holiday party. That's totally fine too, but just give them a reason to stick around. Second part is the stakes, which is why is this an important piece of information or important story, which, could be like, you need to learn this because if you learn this, you're going to be on the right side of this sea change that's happening on your industry. If you don't, you're going to be screwed. Or it could just be like, once your audience gets to know you a little bit better and they're more invested in you, like you're going to learn something really interesting about me that I've never shared before. And I'd like to know what you think of it, whatever the stakes are, right? Like this is
why it matters, basically.
Yeah. Why, like to the audience.
Right. Matters to them.
Yep. Third is the conflict, which is what are the forces at play here, which could be two different people, two different ideas, two different trends, or more than one, or more than two, but usually two. So it could be, like in B2B, it could be like sales versus marketing, or it could be like sales versus engineering. Like, hey, here's the clash of like salespeople sell the shit, engineering people have to build it, and they're mad at each other. Like, why is that? Can it be resolved? Or, so you can make a video called like, why are salespeople quote unquote overpaid? And the conflict of that video could be like salespeople who believe that they are paid fairly versus everyone else who thinks they get paid too much. And you sort of, the story of the video is like, well, let me explain to you why salespeople get paid so much and what the sales process actually is. And then lastly, you leave them on some sort of a cliffhanger. So you don't want to be like one of those movie trailers where they give away the whole movie now and you're like, well, why would I watch this movie? You showed me the whole thing in the trailer.
You do that all in the first 30 seconds or 1 minute?
Yes.
Is that like to make sure that, would you say 30 seconds? Like how fast do you deliver all of that?
A minute, we'll say, it depends. Don't make it any shorter, or don't make it, you got to give yourself enough time to do it right, but you don't want to drag on either. I'd say a minute is, if you look in YouTube, there's a in the watch time and the retention graph, one of the main stats they show you is how many people are still watching at the 30-second mark. They'll compare that to baseline. So that's why I sort of focus on that 30 seconds, but it doesn't have to be 30 seconds on the dot.
Okay, super useful stuff. Okay, so this is assuming you've bought into YouTube, you're ready to make YouTube videos. I want to talk about other like types of videos that you found have worked really well. So one of the things you talk about is niching up with a mainstream rapper. Okay, that sounds complicated, but give us an example, because I think that's a really great way for people to maybe get started in this and start talking about something that would reach that mainstream audience for them.
Yeah. This is the most important, like if you take anything away from this conversation, it should be this. This is the whole essence of YouTube for the type of people who would be listening to this, which is you have some sort of specific, fairly niche thing that you would like to talk about. The problem is that there is not an audience for this thing on YouTube, but in order for you to achieve your goals, you need to find an audience for it. So how do you reconcile these things? Again, so let's say it's attribution modeling, something which nobody cares about outside of like weirdos on LinkedIn. So how are you going to get people to care about this? Niching up refers to the idea of taking this niche. So you've heard people say niche down. Remember, because YouTube is a consumer entertainment app, we want to niche up. So how are we going to get a larger audience to care about this niche thing? So you would take the niche thing like attribution modeling and ask yourself, like, how am I going to make this interesting and appealing to a larger audience that is not, a marketing nerd like me? So it might be something like, so Kim Kardashian has a company called Skims, like an apparel company, might be called something like, how Kim Kardashian made $15 million in a day. And I'm making this up. This didn't actually happen, but you could say, that from doing these various different businesses that she's been involved with over the years, she realized, that email was the most valuable asset that that any business could have. And she knew this because she looked in the software and the data and blah, blah, blah. And she had this moment of like, holy shit, like, if I have someone's email address, then they're worth this much to me. So then she spent all this time accumulating these email addresses. And then, when they launched Skims, she sent out this one big email. And this would be like the climax of the video is like, they wrote this email, the launch said blah, 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 blah. And she wasn't sure if it was going to work, but, then they press send. And then they look in their dashboard 24 hours later and they realize they made $5 million just from one email. How did they know that? Well, there's this thing called marketing attribution where you look at how much do you make from, so they made $10 million today. Well, how much of that came from their Facebook ads versus Kylie Jenner sharing it on her story versus email versus everything else? It's a thing called marketing attribution, which works like this. So that would be how you would talk about marketing attribution in a way that by niching up and connecting it to something that people would care about more, which would be Kim Kardashian's apparel brand.
I love that. So it doesn't have to be celebrities, but
so I have no idea if any of this actually happened.
But I think the main point is like going something mainstream that people do know about, Kim Kardashian, celebrities, trends, and making that apply to you or whatever you do towards the end. Sort of sounds like subtly talking about it. Or it doesn't have to be so subtle. So
no, it doesn't have to be subtle at all. You just got to bring people in. I mean, and it doesn't have to be towards the end either. This gets into sort of the nuance. In fact, I would suggest that you include it as close to the beginning as possible. it's sort of like, you could think of it as like breadcrumbs that are going to be leading them. There is going to be a moment in the video where you do sort of pull off the cloth and reveal, the nerdy thing you came to talk about, but you don't want it to be a surprise. You want to sort of lead them there. It shouldn't feel like a bait and switch, they should actually be looking forward to it. Like, okay, good. I was wondering, I could tell you were sort of leading up to something here. Like, awesome. Let's hear about it.
I think that this is where the nuance comes in. Like, once you've decided YouTube as a channel, it's not just make any video. It's not just make something trendy, but there is a way that you can do this that is good for your business, but does get the views. So yeah, I love this. Do you have any other examples? So you made the Kim Kardashian one up off of your head, but can you think of any examples in B2B that you've seen that have done a good job? So like
No.
you mentioned Y Combinator as one.
No.
I mean, I think Ahrefs does a really great job.
They're okay.
On YouTube.
Yeah, no, they're pretty good. They're hit and miss. Their good ones are pretty good.
If you look at their content, I think they probably look at Mr. Beast. I mean, everyone does. But like
They
you see
shouldn't,
some
though.
kind of thing. Why do you say that?
Because his audience is children and his business model is monetizing extremely large view counts with brand deals from very, very, very like mainstream brands like, candy bars and selling candy bars and stuff like that. Nothing about that resembles your business, right? So why would you copy what he does if nothing about it resembles your business or your goals?
Well, I guess you're still trying to get the top of funnel views. I could see why people do that because it looks easy to repeat as far as you have a lot of examples, go do something like he did, make it apply to your business in some way. But I guess you have to be careful, like you're saying, you want to do something that has some...
should an industrial chemicals company do the same things as Atlassian just because they're both in B2B and they both make a lot of money?
Well, I think when you're starting a YouTube channel, you might not know the answer to that.
Yeah.
Because you're so yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So
no, but when you're doing YouTube,
yes.
I think that there's a lot of people that wouldn't know what space is okay. So I guess that goes down to experimenting. Do you advocate then, okay, you're launching a YouTube channel. Should you just try everything and see what sticks? I mean,
yeah, it's like anything else. You should have a plan going into it and understand that what actually ends up working is probably not going to resemble the plan very much at all. What you're looking for when you start a YouTube channel is you're going to throw out a lot of hooks. And you're going to get a bite on one of them eventually. And you go, oh, okay, there's something here. So if all your videos have been getting 75 views, one of them is going to get 200. And you go, okay, something here. And you're going to try that again, something similar. And this one's getting 400 views. You go, okay. And you're going to try it a third time. And this one's going to get like 1,200. And you go, okay, cool. This is what people want. This is like basically content market fit. And then once you find that, triple down on it and do as much of that as you possibly can because you just found something that works for your audience. That's the game. So
I want to go back to your beginning when you launched how long ago was it that you launched Punk Rock MBA? How many years
I did
ago?
it from 2017 to 2024.
Okay. So you kind of got started somewhere and you must have noticed there were certain videos or certain topics that resonated with your audience. Can you tell us a little bit about that story? Because I'm curious about how you figured out where you were going to double down.
Yeah. So I originally started the channel. It makes me laugh how naive I was at the beginning, even though I started writing when I was 15 in like 1994, 95. So I've been like writing for a very, very long time. And I had somewhat of a following from that, a few thousand people, not huge, but like, somewhat of a following from it. But when I started the channel, it's called the Punk Rock MBA. I want to talk about the MBA part. I want to talk about business because that's sort of the thing I'm most interested in. And I grew up going to punk rock shows and stuff like that. So like, oh, okay, that'll be a funny name. Well, what I didn't understand about YouTube is all the stuff I told you before about it being a consumer entertainment app. Literally nobody knows what MBA even means. Like, this is the thing to understand about YouTube. Nobody, like maybe 1% of people on YouTube know, like if you ask them who's more important, a vice president or a manager, like maybe 1% of them would know the answer. Because most people do not live in this world of like white collar knowledge workers with like, clear development programs and hierarchy and like annual reviews and all this shit. And that's not like putting them down or anything like that. Like the number of people who do exist in that world is very small. Like nobody, like you could have a perfectly respectable, like my dad was a corrections officer for 25 years, like totally legitimate job. And he wouldn't know any of that stuff. So, but I naively did not understand that. I was like, oh, everyone will understand what this is. They didn't. And so I got zero traction talking about like any of the business stuff. If I knew what I know now, I think I could have found a way. But I was like, okay, I'm going to totally switch direction here because my goal here is just to build an audience. And I really don't care what it's about, because just the whole point of it was that I wanted to understand YouTube better and I wanted people to just literally know that I exist. So I switched to talking about music because I had written about that a bunch before and I sort of knew what people were looking for there. And once I switched to that, started working pretty much right away. And, very quickly I got like 10,000 views or something on a video. And then after that, sort of was off to the races and I got 6 figures on pretty much everything after that.
So you realized what wasn't working and then you figured out what was relevant for you. But this ended up becoming an entire brand itself. So I think there is that experimental phase where you have to be realistic and see what's working and then follow what works. And that's what you did. And it ended up becoming something totally different. So I'm also, I'm curious, because you stopped doing videos on that channel, you stopped that for now. How do you think, you said this was also part of the way you wanted people to know who you were, building your personal brand as Finn McKenty as well. How has that worked for you? And like how, you've gotten some backlash as well. Like how have you dealt with some of the negative side where you're building a personal brand, but you have a lot of followers who may not also agree with everything you have to say?
Well, so there's a couple things to think about. Is my audience is particularly mentally ill. Nobody gets into this kind of music because everything was okay when they were growing up and stuff like that. So like the audience is literally unwell. So they're particularly kind of unhinged. So I don't think most people need to be worried about this stuff. The other thing is that there's a thing that happens once you reach a certain scale as a creator where the default opinion of you switches from positive to negative. And that particular size sort of depends on the niche. But it happens to everybody in every niche. Once you get a particular size and it's like, oh, that guy sucks. That's just how it is. Because there's a lot of people that just want to be negative and tear other people down when they perceive that, tall poppy syndrome, when they think you've grown too tall, they want to cut you down. Most people will never have to deal with that because most people will never get an audience that size. And that's totally fine. That's great. That's one of the best things about LinkedIn is like you can be totally successful there, have a great business with an audience of a couple thousand people, and you don't need to ever sort of get into that arena of being like an actual public figure that is in the line of fire that way, which sucks. And it's terrible for your mental health. And like, why do you think everyone in Hollywood is crazy? Because it's horrible. Like imagine like I'm only like somewhat well known. Imagine being like actually famous, like how horrible that would be.
Yeah.
So I forget your question.
Well, I want to understand because, okay, we're talking about B2B. And you brought your personal brand into, what became a business for you, right? So I think I want to understand, okay, do you think people need to put their personal brand together, like put their face out there? And I guess we were talking about the negative sides of that, but you're saying like maybe you can do that on a platform like LinkedIn where you're not going to get as much maybe negative feedback. Because I think there is a fear people have of putting their face to something because of the negative things they may receive.
Yeah, I think
online.
On LinkedIn, you don't need to worry too much about that. There's always going to be a few like jerks and stuff, but you don't really need to worry about that. People are generally fine there and, maybe a little bit rude at times, but, there's like, you can go Google my name. There's like literally hundreds of people calling me like a pedophile and, every horrible thing you could possibly imagine. That's not going to happen to you on LinkedIn.
But is there a fear that you think, I was going to say on YouTube, I guess when you have to deal with that, I guess that's another video for another time.
There's nothing you can do about it.
But there is a fear, like that personal brand is connected to a company. Do you think that there's a way to be successful on B2B, say on YouTube specifically, without putting your face out there? Like I think that people talk about the faceless YouTube channels.
Yes.
Like that is a way.
It's harder because humans are naturally, psychologically drawn to connect with other individuals. So yeah, but there's examples of faceless channels that do fine. Like, in the sort, we'll call it B2B, not exactly, but it's a Firebase, like a software engineering channel. And, I don't think that they have any faces in their videos, at least not the ones that I've seen, and they're funny. But it's a trade-off that, number one, it's going to be harder to build an audience because people want to connect with other humans. And then if you do build an audience, well, they're not going to know your name or your face, that you've given up a lot of the upside there. So I think you just sort of have to accept that, when you decide to flip the switch and be a public figure, the good and the bad, and just understand that like the people who say terrible things about you don't matter at all. Nobody cares. Nobody gives a shit what these people think. Like, think about it. If you're watching a video and you see a bunch of like nasty comments, do you care at all what those people think? No. Do you even
I
read
think-
them? Most people don't.
I think, yeah, at some point, every video is going to get that kind of
Yeah, their
commentary.
opinion means nothing. Nothing. It means nothing.
I would say that I do believe this stops people from sharing that fear of, oh, I'm going to get some trolls, I'm going to get some negative
Understandable.
comments. But I mean, I also feel very confident that in this world right now, okay, AI can do content that's faceless. By putting your face to something, it gives so much more credibility, so much more. It does what AI can't do. Well, I mean, there's AI videos in that, but I really believe personal brand is the way to go. So you're saying it is just the game you're playing. If you're going to be out there, you're going to get negativity. You have to deal with it, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. And
I mean, if you want to do sales, you're going to have to deal with a lot of rejection. There is no way to do sales without rejection. It's just part of what you're signing up for. But I have had a particularly harsh, I would say, journey on YouTube. Even among people I know who are like creators among my size, I've had a particularly tough go of it because I'm very different from the people who watch my videos in ways that they don't like. Most people are you're going to get a little bit of it, but most people are not going to get as much as I did.
Yeah.
And you're also,
well, I appreciate
it's unlikely that you're going to get 130 million views also. And if you do, then you fucking won the game, and who cares what these people think?
Exactly. But I really appreciate you being, honest and open about that, because I think that it's the downside. I mean, yeah, we could talk all day about the great sides of YouTube, but if any social media, they're the downside. Yeah. Okay. Let's talk
TikTok
more about.
TikTok is like 1,000 times worse, by the way.
I was going to say, we're not even talking about TikTok and social media and teenagers. And my son isn't getting social media until he's like 21.
Right. I mean, 30 might be good.
Yeah. Okay. I want to talk a little bit more about execution side of things. So you do help founders with YouTube, with LinkedIn, with different things. Tell me some stories about what you're doing to actually help them get it right. So like, say you're looking at a channel, maybe they already have maybe red flags or things that you think could be quick wins for them. So think about it in terms of the stories and the use cases that you faced personally.
Sure. So the number one factor in any video is the topic. So I would think about it this way: think of it as the combination of awareness and engagement. So awareness is the total number of people who are aware of this thing. That would be the TAM. The number of people who will watch this video, because basically people don't watch videos about stuff they don't know about, that they're not familiar with. So that's the TAM. And then the engagement, which is the amount people care about the thing, will determine the number of people who may actually click on it. So a good example of this to sort of show the discrepancy of those two things would be if you wanted to talk about movies. Thousands rom-coms, pretty much everybody knows about whatever. We'll say like Sleepless in Seattle. Everybody knows about that movie, right? But how many people like really care about rom-coms? Happens to be my favorite genre of movie, but it's not like any Katherine Heigl movie that involves her buying a dress. I'm in. I love them. And there's several of them, but it's not a genre that people are particularly passionate about. So I would say it meets the potential audience for it is actually not that big. So a lot of awareness, but very low engagement. So probably kind of a small audience. On the other hand, horror movies, which I don't like at all, are the opposite of that. Like they're not the biggest thing in the world, but the people who are into horror movies are really, 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 really into them. So, the awareness smaller, but the engagement and awareness is like almost a circle. Like if you know about, I don't even know what they are, but like if you know about these movies, like you care about them. And so the potential audience for horror movies is actually larger than rom-coms, even though it is a less well-known genre. So number one, I would look at their topics and say, like, this is too niche, this is too niche, this is too niche. Either we need to niche up or like just don't talk about this at all because not enough people care about it. Second thing is the combination of title and thumbnail. So think about that combination as a dial in which you are selecting the emotion that you want the audience to feel, whether that is fear or amusement or schadenfreude or desire, like whatever. Anything is potentially valid, but that's the dial. And then the combination of title and thumbnail is how you are going to make them experience that emotion when they scroll through it on their feed, which is going to make them either click on it or not. So for example, there's one that I saw a while ago that's pretty good called like how mega corporations use design and marketing to manipulate you. And the thumbnail is like marionette type silhouette with, a guy dancing, and there's like the Nike and Apple logos there. So the emotion there. I think I have
that here. I can share that.
Okay, perfect. Yes, there it is.
This one here.
That's the one.
Yeah.
How brands use design and marketing to control your mind. Yeah, design manipulation. So you can see here, As you helpfully pulled up, I didn't know they sent you this. So the emotion there would be fear. There's actually two emotions, fear and curiosity. So fear is sort of the, the rich guy bad thing that's going on right now, where, any company is bad, any big company is bad. And then, so I'm afraid. And so naturally I want to know, well, how are they trying to control me? So think about that. Very, very, and it also, getting back to the awareness piece, it uses Nike and Apple, two of the most well-known consumer brands. So I would say like that is a fantastic job of doing what I'm talking about. So that's the second thing we look at, their title and thumbnail. And then I would look at their retention to see how they're doing in terms of, actually creating the content. Roughly speaking, I would say if you're hitting the 30% retention mark, meaning that the average person watches at least 30% of the video, that's sort of the minimum that I would say is like, okay, 40% or higher is good, 50% or higher is awesome. So those would be sort of the three things I would look at.
Those are excellent. I was going to say, this is the long form YouTube video. How are you approaching short form YouTube shorts? Like, do you think that it's a critical part of?
No, I think short form video is basically trash everywhere. And I'll tell you why. So a few reasons why I think short form video is poo-poo. Number one, it doesn't make any money, which a lot of people here won't care about because you're using it to drive leads to some other sort of business. But, it's nice. I mean, I was making $200,000-$300,000 a year from YouTube AdSense. You're going to make I have other like short form videos that, I would get 200,000 views or something on a short and make literally like $8 from it. So you're not going to make any money from it, but maybe you don't care about that. Maybe you were just here to drive traffic to something else. Still a problem, because the nature of short form videos on all apps is that it is a passively consumed brain rot experience. Basically, you don't seek out short form video. You just sit there and swipe, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. So the level of engagement is a lot lower, which means that it's way harder to build a brand with those. So you can think about, let's say your neighbor really likes TikTok and you're like, hey neighbor, what's your favorite, what do you watch on TikTok? And he's like, oh my God, there's this girl that she polishes shoes and it's like, she's so fast at it and it's so cool. And they start out, they look terrible. And then she's done, they look amazing. I watched like 20 of her videos last night. You're like, awesome. What's her name? Like, I don't know. Right. So they don't really build brand very well. And it's extremely hard to drive people off of the platform because number one, obviously the apps don't want you to leave, but users don't want to leave either. Like they're not here to go click on your shit and go somewhere else. They're here to watch more short form brain rot. And lastly, the viewers of short form video typically don't convert into viewers of long form video, because sort of the fundamental rule of all content in general is that people want more of the same. So if people come to you watching short form videos, they don't want your long form videos, they want more short form. So it doesn't make any money, doesn't really build brand, very hard to tell a story, a compelling story, for the people who would watch this in 60 seconds. It doesn't drive traffic, to your long form videos, and it doesn't drive traffic off the app. What's it really good for?
That's
a lot of people I know just stop making shorts because they're like, fuck this. Why would I do this? You
would think that shorts are sort of, like you said, something that could lead you to long form, but you don't see that.
Well, that's what YouTube will tell you, but it's a lie.
Yeah.
Every YouTuber knows this. It doesn't work that way.
So if you were doing a channel today, you would just you would not invest in any short form for that YouTube channel?
No.
Okay.
Do shorts if you're at a place where you basically, are looking for that extra 5%. When you got things figured out and you have enough of a team that you're like, cool, we got some slack, let's do some side quests. Do it then. But anytime before that, it's, if anything, I can't prove this, but I feel like it may actually cannibalize your long form video, because YouTube, obviously the only thing they care about are shorts. It's the only thing they ever talk about in their product updates and all their marketing and blah, 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 because they desperately want to be TikTok, which is ironic because TikTok is promoting longer form content. And I'm certain that from a product point of view, that shorts make no money. So I don't know why YouTube is so desperate to push them. But so if you give them the opportunity to promote your shorts, they're probably going to do it over promoting your long form content.
I see. All right. Well, I have learned so much from you. I want to, I want to, before I publish this episode, I need your take on what would be an ideal thumbnail for this conversation or title for, obviously I have a channel. It's just podcasts. A little bit different than creating a video with a, strong hook, etc. But any thoughts on what would you title this?
I would probably call it something like in quotes, because this is a template that I like to use, is like you can, if you use, the quotes are a little bit of a cheat code here, because you can share a very spicy idea, but if you use quotes, you're sort of implicitly saying that it's not necessarily your idea. So you have a little bit of an escape hatch there, if that makes sense. Or a question mark also is another way of doing this. So I would call it something like, quotes, B2B companies absolutely suck at YouTube. And so then I think the emotion that people would experience there is either they think it's funny, or they might be, I think probably a lot of them would be curious. Like, you'd think they'd be mad, but they won't be mad because everybody knows this.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, yes,
someone said it out loud.
Yeah, they'll be
exactly.
Like, why? Why are they so bad at this? Why is Microsoft, what did Microsoft make last year? Like $60 billion or something insane? Their YouTube videos get literally like 800 views.
So interesting. But I mean, and at least Microsoft, they're hiring new people like Heike Young. I think she's doing a good job on
awesome.
LinkedIn.
I love her.
With obviously, it's interesting that she works for Microsoft because she doesn't feel like that corporate.
She was at Salesforce before. Yeah. So, yeah. She's great. I love her. Yeah. So, I mean, that's just a great example of, here's a great thing. I'll leave you with this. Here's a great thing for entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, founders of small companies. YouTube is amazing because it is a pure meritocracy. It is a ruthless, pure meritocracy. Amazon and Microsoft and Salesforce, look at their channels. All of them, crickets. Unless they use ads to boost a video, which you can tell because it'll have like 400,000 views and 5 comments. Any video that they actually run as organic will get less than 1,000 views. And these are the biggest companies in the world making videos about their own products, and they can't crack 1,000 views. You tomorrow could put out a video about any given Microsoft product and beat them at YouTube because you would make better content than they do. Their production values are awesome, but nobody cares because they have nothing to say. So it is a huge and they will never be good at YouTube because there's too much bureaucracy. There's too many layers of bullshit. Nobody is going to risk their job by taking a chance. They're just going to play it safe. The VP is like, let's put this 45-minute keynote I did at Martech World USA on YouTube. Can we do that? And you're like, yes, sir, boss, not a problem. Because you're not going to be like, nobody wants to watch your fucking terrible keynote on YouTube. You can't say that. So they will always be bad at YouTube because of this, because it is a cultural problem. So you have an unfair advantage against literally, it is trivially easy for you to beat literally the biggest companies in the world at YouTube. I would exploit that.
I love that. That is an awesome kind of idea to leave people with, especially as there's a lot of concern about how we stand out in the future with AI content and this and that. But I mean, YouTube is kind of one of the answers.
I heard the Cleveland there when you said content.
Really?
Yes.
I heard the Cleveland come out.
Yeah.
Content. My mom and dad.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can come out. It can come
Jack's
out.
Backpack Shack.
Yeah. For those who don't know, I am from Cleveland, although I live in Taiwan now. So Finn, I will link your links below. People can check you out. And thank you so much for sharing so much with us today.
Thank you.